Hello, everybody, and welcome to Everything But the Cats, the podcast where we are legally, morally, ethically, and financially obligated to talk about everything but the cats. For the most part, we occasionally break that last one. Anyways, my name's Gage,
I'm DJ.
and as you are well aware, this coming week is Thanksgiving. And if you've been following with us since the beginning, or you've checked into some of our older episodes, you know what we do on Thanksgiving. And DJ, what is it that we do on Thanksgiving?
I'm gonna stuff my face.
That is
Uh,
exactly true.
I'm gonna find a whole live turkey, and by the end of that night, that that whole thing will be inside of me.
Yep, that's exactly what we do on Thanksgiving.
You want pumpkin pie? You take a pumpkin, you take a pie. By the end of the night, they're both inside of me. Also, I'm sorry for kind of the tone with which I'm saying inside of me. I'm just gonna eat these things. To be clear.
Yep, that is how we spend Thanksgiving.
What are you thankful for, Gage?
I'm thankful for the good friend that I have in DJ.
It's the turkey.
I was about to say it's the turkey.
I think we have to leave all of this.
I think we do.
Good.
Anyways, what we did last year is we kind of did a year in review for our Thanksgiving episode, just looking back over the past year and some of the things that we enjoyed, some of the things that we learned, some of our best laughs, some of our cries, things along those lines. And then we finish it off by talking a little bit about what God is doing in our lives and how we're growing right now. And so before we dive in, we have some specific questions we are going to be looking at. And if you want to leave some of your answers to these questions as well below, please do in the comments. You can do that on Spotify, you can do that on YouTube, you can do that pretty much anywhere that you listen. And if you like the content that you get with us, man, we're just so glad that you found us. Uh, but please go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment, go ahead and subscribe to us because as I've seen recently, about 80% of the people who watch our content aren't subscribed. So please go ahead and join us so you can get more content. I would say quality, but just more. I just quantity. So that's what we're going to be doing. So the first thing we're going to talk about, the first thing on our list, is some of our favorite pieces of media that we have consumed throughout the last year. And that can include movies, that can include TV shows, books, video games, really anything in that category. And we're just going to talk about a couple of our favorites, just that we've watched this year or that we've played or read this year. So let's go ahead and start with, because I know that we both have probably done a little bit of each. Like we've probably done each of them.
Yeah.
So I'd say let's go ahead and start with one or two of our favorite movies that we've watched this year.
Mm,
And it doesn't have to be a movie that came out this year. Same for
yeah.
books, etc. Just something that we watched for the first time this year.
I mean, I'm pretty sure last year I did Arkham Asylum as like a video game I was thankful for. Maybe that was the New Year's
No,
one.
you did that for media consumed. You definitely did.
Yeah.
Well, it could be something that we've replayed or rewatched, but just something that was a really
Yeah.
enjoyable experience. Like I can imagine having Isaiah when he's able to like start watching and understanding things, like watching some of your favorite movies with him and seeing
Yeah.
kind of how he does that, or playing video games with him, just making the experience all new. I can imagine that would be really exciting.
Yes. I don't know if you have answers on deck. I'm still thinking. So if you've got answers on deck, you should go for it.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and give three movies. Okay, no, four movies, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each one. One of them is Door to Door. It was a TV movie, and it was about a man named Bill Porter who lived in the Northwest. I believe it was in Portland. And he was a door to door salesman with cerebral palsy. And this is a true story. It's based on his real story, and it was just so heartfelt. And yeah, I'd recommend watching the movie. I cried multiple times throughout it. It wasn't like overly sad, but like it was just like such a tug on your heartstrings kind of movie. and all of the actors and actresses did such a good job. It was such a good movie. Even like just for a TV movie, it was so good. I watched Good Will Hunting for the first time this year.
Mm,
That was one of, if you remember the Guess the Guest episode, that was one of our friend Adam's favorite movies.
mm,
And I
mhm.
understand why. It was so good. It had comedy, it had romance, it had drama, and it was just really good. Another movie that had me crying. Uh, um, I watched a movie called Savage Land, and that was a found footage movie that takes place in a small town in Texas, I believe, just across from the Mexican border, or just like real close to the Mexican border. It came out in like 2017 when there was a lot of tension in regards to the border, and it's a zombie movie, but the way that it handles zombies is very interesting, and I think it has some good commentary on some of the issues that we're facing us and that still face us regarding immigration and things along those lines, while also being a very subtle horror film. And then the last one was A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the movie with Tom Hanks about Mr. Rogers. And
Mm.
I thought that was just a very enjoyable movie. It was
Mhm.
it was heartfelt. Just other than Savage Land, I'm just all in the mood for like heartfelt movies. So
Love it.
those are my four favorite movies that I watched this year.
That's great. I don't watch a lot of movies. We don't just don't have a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
because our life is kind of it's little short bursts. Oh, real quick before I say anything, I do want to give a shout out to my buddy Hayden Van Dorian. You're a real one. You're I don't know what I'd do without you. It's I think it's worth thanking you right here right now. Now anyways, going on to movies. I don't watch a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I was just saying. And then especially we don't watch a lot of movies together because our life is like based on like these maybe hour long bursts where Isaiah is sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So but we did just a few months ago, we both together finally watched the Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh, okay.
Um, so we hadn't seen them. We didn't watch extended edition because we didn't have access to your Max yet. We were watching on her brother's Amazon Prime, and so we had to watch the short versions, which is fine. But I feel like at the end of it, or like going into it, I think that like it's got to be overrated the amount that people talk about it, and maybe I would still lean that way a little bit. Like I mean, it's got to be overrated the way that people talk about it, the way that people kind of like make their whole personalities about it. But at the end of it, after you've just watched, like 7.5, 8 hours of Frodo and company destroying the ring,
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of it, like, man, that was really good. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was solid. So I haven't started reading it yet, but it's on my list, and who knows if I'll finish it. I love myself, so we'll see. I love myself enough to like that it's okay if I stop reading books from like the 50s, like 40s and 50s. I'm allowed to stop reading those. So,
On that note, real quick,
yeah.
I want to be a person who like reads and watches the classics, but
Yeah.
recently I just had the conclusion, I'm like, if I don't enjoy it, like what's the point?
Yeah.
What benefit does a classic novel do for my life if not for the enjoyment of reading it? And I get that there are some stories and there are some writings that are not for enjoyment purposes, they're for betterment purposes, but like Moby Dick doesn't make you a better person.
Yeah, or like Hunger Games.
Yeah, but that's all.
Yeah.
That's all. I just
Oh, that's a solid point. The other movie, I rewatched a movie this year, and it is called Life is Beautiful. And I have you seen it, Gage, or have I talked about it?
we talked about it in like high school, middle school or
Okay,
high
that's when
school,
I
I
first saw
think.
it. High school.
High school. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is a dope movie. Okay, well, so it's a Holocaust movie. Um, is maybe an important caveat to saying it is a dope movie. An opinion that I have is that like if you're gonna do a Holocaust movie, like you can't miss. Like you can't make a bad Holocaust movie, otherwise like your career is done
Yeah.
because you're gonna be the jerk that made a bad Holocaust movie.
Yeah.
So like because whoever's reputation was on the line, it's a solid movie, and it like man, I've already said more than I want to say about the plot of this movie. But like the first half of the movie is like just really beautiful. Like the movie's called Life is Beautiful, and for the first half of this movie, life is beautiful. Like
Mm.
there's this guy who's just very happy-go-lucky. Everything goes his way, and he's able to like manipulate things to go his way, and like just a very happy, friendly man. And like you watch him succeed, and you're like, you get it, dude. Like you're great. And it's like him convincing a woman to fall in love with him. And then the whole second half of the movie is like 5, 6 years later, they have a son who's like 5, 6 years old, and they're carted off to a concentration camp, and it's him like essentially convincing his son that like everything that they're going through at this camp is like all a big fun game
Mm.
to like keep his son's morale high. And then yeah, so like excellent movie. Rewatched it. Actually bought it on YouTube so I could rewatch it earlier this year. So enjoyed that. And then I think the only other movie I've watched this year, at least since March, because we stopped watching movies when Isaiah came.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only other movie that I've watched this year is probably The Iron Claw, which I
Okay.
kind of watched over a few sessions, and it was good. I can't say anything about like how I felt about it without like pretty significant spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so like pretty good. If you're curious what funny insight I have about it, go ahead and leave us a comment, and I'll or DM us or something, and I'll let you know. Because I've got what I think is a pretty funny insight. So, anyways, those are probably the 5 movies I've watched this year.
Okay, so let's move on to TV shows. Did you watch any new TV shows this year?
Um,
Because if you didn't, we can skip that.
no, like kind of more started like jumped back into one that I'd seen a couple episodes of back in the day,
Okay.
but didn't really. Oh, I guess I did jump into a lot of the like Amazon ones when we
Mm-hmm.
got Prime. So I started like Fallout and Reacher and stuff. Oh, I watched the Reacher movies this year.
Oh,
Like after
the
having Isaiah, I was like, I need to be more of a man, and so I watched the Jack Reacher movies, and they were good, like
yeah, they're fun.
masculine Tom Cruise stuff.
Yeah,
So,
they're fun movies.
hmm I mean, we're still watching. Well, I don't know. I don't think we were watching The Middle yet this time last year.
Okay.
So we've been watching The Middle, which is great TV, just fun sitcom, Midwestern set, pretty fun. And then it's actually very similar. So what kind of our shows right now are? Oh, I don't know if I would mention this last year. We've been watching Elsbeth season 2, which I think see it might have come out last year, but it's a really fun, almost detective type show on Paramount. Love it. And then mostly we watch like comedies.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been watching Parks and Rec. We had kind of abandoned it for a while. And then I would say not I would say, but like we've been watching. So we've got The Middle, which is like Midwestern sitcom,
Mm-hmm.
and then very similar is a show called Corner Gas, and it's an older Canadian show um, that's available on Amazon and or Freevee. You can watch it for free, but it like is just a small town in Saskatchewan,
Mm.
and like their antics that they get up to, and it's very kind of low stakes, chill
Mm-hmm.
comedy. So we enjoy it.
Yeah. So I've only started like two shows in the last year. I've probably started a couple of others. I started The Rookie, which was I
Mm.
really enjoyed that. I haven't watched any of the newest season because I had Hulu and then I didn't have Hulu and now I have Hulu again, but I just haven't ever used it.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in the mood to watch a TV show, I pretty much always watch the same thing. And I'm probably on my sixth time since starting it rewatching Psych. Really love Psych. It's just I don't know. I think it has there are certain parts of it that I think haven't aged as well, but overall as a show, I think it aged really like pretty well. And
Yeah.
it's it's just for the most part fairly good natured. It's fun. It's an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes to a degree, and it's got it just it's the kind of comedy that I want most of the
Yeah.
time. It's low stakes, even though it is like murder mysteries, but it's very low stakes
Yeah.
murder mysteries. So you never really feel like there's anything crazy going on that you're just anxious about.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that about it. And then From, which I've talked about before with DJ with you, but I haven't left any of that in the podcast. It's a good
Mm.
show. I watched the first two seasons. Season three is currently airing, I think. It might
Mm.
be done by now, but it's currently airing, and I can't watch it because I don't have MGM Plus. And seasons one and two are available on Amazon Prime. So if you're interested, check it out. But essentially, it's about these people who just wind up in this town. It's made by the same people who made Lost. And so there's a lot of similar themes if you've watched Lost. But essentially, they end up in this small town and there's no way to escape it. Doesn't matter if you have a vehicle or not, you can't just drive out because if you leave, the road like supernaturally turns you around and puts you back in this small little town. And when I say it's a small town, it is a small town. It just has a few houses, a diner, a church, and then a big house that they use for it's called Colony House, funny enough.
Mm.
But it's where a
That's
bunch of the
funny.
people decide to live together, essentially.
Sweet.
And so essentially they're stuck in this small town with no way to escape. And
It's like Fort Scott.
yeah, it's like Fort Scott. And it would be kind of perfect because they seem to have a somewhat endless food supply. They seem to have pretty much all that they would need and they don't have to work. They just get to live in this little town and they have the things they need and they go about their lives. Except at night there are these monsters that come out, and if you're not in a protected space, they brutally get rid of you. And
So if you're not in at night, if you're not in the place you should be at night, that you know you should be at night, they get you.
yeah,
So I feel like there's a solution.
just stay where you're supposed to be.
Or like, yeah, like it's like 5 o'clock. It's time.
Turn in for the day. We don't have
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah. I solved the whole show. I've not even seen it.
See, but everybody wants to get back to like their friends and their families and stuff like that. It's just
That's fair.
it's pretty good, and I would recommend it if you have a place to watch it. But otherwise, those are the three shows: Psych,
Yeah.
The Rookie, and From. Anyways, shall we
Sweet.
do books or video games? Because I've got
I
one new video game I played, and I played it for 2 hours.
I'm fine either way. I've got answers for either.
Let's go video games first, and I'll
Yeah.
do video games. I'll go first because you went first on the
Yeah.
last one. So the only new video game I played this year, actually there were technically two. Lethal Company. I played Lethal Company for the first
Hmm.
time, and that was I'm not playing it again. It was okay,
Yeah.
but it's not my speed.
That's
And
fair.
the other game that I played was Grounded. If you have not seen it, DJ Garrett and I actually streamed it, and we're probably going to stream it again. It was a lot of fun, and you can watch our streams because we do them here on YouTube. If you're an audio only person, we have streams now on YouTube sometimes. Check them out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us
Yeah.
for our video journeys.
Yeah. So I started playing Grounded. It was like it would have been over kind of Christmas last year, so I wouldn't have been able
Mm-hmm.
to say it this year. It's a fun game. I've enjoyed it. I haven't played it in a while, and I feel like lately, just the past couple weeks, I've been in one of those like, man, just single player video games just aren't scratching the itch for me
Mm-hmm.
right now. And I feel like that comes and goes, but I keep like trying to get it to scratch the itch, and it just doesn't. So I haven't played Grounded and like Alone in a while. It was really fun to play it with Garrett and Gage the other day. And then I've enjoyed a couple of factory building games like Factorio and Satisfactory for those of you who know those. And then so Angela has a pretty limited like kind of type of video game that she'll play, and she likes a good like cozy top down
Mm.
2D game. So we haven't played it. We've played it probably 0 times this year, but like she enjoys Stardew Valley together.
Okay.
Excuse me. But we also play some Overcooked.
Mm-hmm.
We've been playing that for years together. But then this year we got started on very similar to Overcooked. We have been playing a game called Played Up, which is very similar to Overcooked for those of you who know Overcooked. But it's kind of like a roguelike where you get to set up your own restaurant each day. And then when you die, like you have to start over with a new restaurant. Super fun. Um, More chill than Overcooked. Um, and yeah, fun. Also, I've come to appreciate Fortnite more. But
Okay. So let's do books then, and you can
yeah,
go first on books.
yeah. I've become a reader again this year. We've talked about it on the show some.
Mm-hmm.
It was mid-January and I had some birthday money and I decided to buy a Kindle because really ever since like high school I've been curious like if I had a Kindle would I
Mm-hmm.
read more? And the answer is a resounding yes, apparently. Because when you read on a Kindle, like the pages are shorter
Mm-hmm.
and you can like keep track of like how many minutes you have until the end of your chapter. But like with shorter pages, you just get more regular like dopamine hits. So I've really enjoyed reading more this year. I read a lot of Tozer
Mm.
toward the beginning of the year. So he's like a Christian preacher, theologian. That's the word. Kind of guy. Uh, Writes a lot about just like Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, good good stuff. It was all written in like the 50s though, so it's like it's still practical and topical, but it's like what the heck did I just read? What is Jax at the soda fountain? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I read The Pursuit of God by Tozer a couple years ago, and it was really good, but there were some parts that were just a bit much, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so I read some Tozer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, am I like glitching out?
Just a little bit, but so am I. So it's
Okay.
kind of just what we're dealing with today. What was that?
The heck was that? All right, I'm gonna try something. Let me work some magic here. Yeah, so that's probably the only theological books that I've finished were Tozer books, which is a shame because I started reading more. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read all the theology now and like all the Christian books, and so I've got like Prayer by Tim Keller and just a few others that I had through like Kindle Unlimited that were great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I've read at least another one. There are a couple of books I've read. I'll go and talk about them too. That are like almost dramatic retellings of like the Old Testament.
Oh, okay.
So there's one called The Paradise King by Blaine Eldridge that is essentially looking at like different kings throughout throughout the Bible because it's like leading up to Jesus and then Jesus is the final one. I haven't finished it yet because Angela and I started reading it together. We just did David like 4 months ago. So we'll get there. I believe it's Josiah then Jesus. But it's just a really good retelling, and I think that from kind of gauging my like our like theological background, it's easy to assume that like spiritual things aren't real or like God is real in a spiritual like in a physical spiritual sense, but then like anything like demon wise like yes but like no,
Mm-hmm.
or like just stuff like that. And I think that in the book it does a really good job of like just like no, yeah, they were real, like they were praying to demons and like the Egyptian magicians managed to turn their rod into a serpent as well or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
very, yeah, just it leans into like, no, that stuff's real. At
Mm-hmm.
least like according to the Bible, this stuff is real. Yeah, so I read that, and then there's another one called like Hitchhiking with the Prophets by Chad Bird, I think. Very similar premise, good stuff. But finally, the like if I'm talking about the books that I read this year, I can really only talk about the Cradle series by Will White.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about them plenty. I finished the last book while we were in the hospital with Isaiah. Like I think he and Angela were napping,
Mm-hmm.
and I finally read like the last hour of the book that I like had to read. Like that was what I had left to read when we showed up to the hospital.
Okay.
So, uh, but it's 12 books, and essentially this guy Lyndon goes from next to useless to like the most powerful being in the universe. Um,
Solo leveling. Okay.
yeah, no, there are a lot of like different categories for what it is. Um, yeah, there are like Asian names for the category, and it's very steeped in like Asian, not necessarily mythology, but like culture and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Really, really great books. Highly recommend. I have recommended them plenty, but I will still recommend them more. Really, really good books. So yeah, I also read Elantris by Brandon Sanderson.
As
Brandon?
Andrew would say, Brando Sando.
Brando Sando.
Yep.
So good book. Not the good book. A good book.
Hey, good book. So I've talked about it on the podcast before. I started Blood Meridian.
I think you mentioned that last year.
Yeah, I did. I got about halfway through it and then gave up. And then I got about halfway through The Terror and gave up. But I did actually finally get into a reading kick. And so I've got 6 books that I
Nice.
just want to share briefly. The first book that I read this year was called Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. It was originally a creepypasta or a r slash no sleep entry or multiple no sleep entries that were novelized. And so I have the book. It's paperback. I recommend it. It's eerie. It's creepy. It's got some parts of it seem to drag on just a little bit, but it overall it's a very creepy story. And the last words in the final chapter just kind of stuck with me for probably a couple of days after I
Mm,
finished it. So it was really good. And then I read Crazy Love by Francis Chan, which is
nice.
behind me there. And it was really good as well. I think it didn't really challenge me in that it brought up themes that I wasn't already familiar with. I mean, the book was written back in like 2008 or something like that, 2009, and but it challenged me in that it just kind of like woke me up a little bit because I think I had gotten kind of lax in my relationship with God at that point. And when I read it, it just kind of it was like a good little wake up call as to what it means to be loved by God and to love Him. And so that was really good. So I would highly recommend that one. I read Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, which is kind of a dark comedy, a darkly comedic take on an anti-war book written by somebody who served in World War II and was present at the bombing of Dresden. So it was weird, and a lot of the things that he says, and just a lot of things about Kurt Vonnegut in general, haven't really aged well. But I think it's still a good book, and it is a dark comedy and deals with the war and how it affected people in a way that I don't think a lot of other people could do. And so it was good. I would recommend it. I read Erasing Hell by Francis Chan, which is just a book dealing with the theological concept of hell. What does Scripture say about it? What are we to do with that? Things along those lines. It was pretty good. I think it does a really good job of oversimplifying any of the competing views, but it presented its view very well. I read The Deep by Nick Cutter, which is a horror novel and deals with, if you've ever seen the movies, just think The Thing meets Event Horizon at the bottom of Mariana's Trench. And if you get that reference, you understand exactly what you're in for with this book. It is bleak from start to finish. And every time it looks like hope is going to be there, it is gone. It is not a book that I recommend for the faint of heart. It is not a book I recommend for people who can't really read things, or who might get triggered by things such as animal violence, cruelty to other people, body horror, and other things. It's just kind of gross at times. Reading a lot of the reviews, I don't know if I just slept through most of the book or if I'm a lot more desensitized than I think I am. But it wasn't as
That's
bad to me as it was to everybody else who left a review for it. It was fine, but it was bleak, like I said. And then I read American Demon by Daniel Stashower, which is a nonfiction. It's a history book about Elliot Ness, who's most famous for being part of the Untouchables, the group who was trying to take down Al Capone, and it's how what he did after that, which is where he moved to Cleveland and was their safety administrator or whatever. And at the same time, there was a series of killings that happened in Cleveland known as the Torso Killings, or the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. I believe BuzzFeed Unsolved did an episode on this, and so the book doesn't give you who did it. It gives you an idea of who might have done it, but like it's BuzzFeed Unsolved did an episode, so it's an unsolved mystery. It's a good true crime book, and it was just fun. I mean, it was really
yeah.
dark at times, but a lot of the times when you're dealing with historical topics, it can be easy to just get overdone in the details. And I think that I think the Stash Hour did a good job of doing it as a narrative. So I would recommend that book if you're into true crime or unsolved mysteries. Those are
Sounds
the
like
books I read.
yeah. It sounds like a diverse group of books.
I try to keep my whoever watches what books I read on their toes.
That's funny. I So two things. One, I'm planning on reading Until Unity by Francis Chan here pretty soon.
Okay, that's the one that just came out,
Um,
right? Like in
I think
22, 21,
something
22.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
21, 22, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, hear me out. I think we could do. I don't know how many weeks it is, but like maybe we could add that into the rotation of episodes. Like if we read through it together and did just like book club uh,
I'd be down.
each week. Not each week, but like
Yeah,
maybe it's like every other week or something like that.
I'd be down to do a book club.
Sweet. I'll be there.
Okay, let's do it. I need to get the book then,
Yeah,
but that's
same.
no big deal. Yeah, that's the media we consumed. The next question is, what are some standout moments from your year?
Standout moments. I need to look at this list again. Do you have any thoughts for favorite moments?
Yeah, so some of my favorite moments this year, we went on a canoe trip and we
Yeah.
made an episode about it, talking about how we almost died. But it was no, it was really good to be able to hang out in person with DJ and Evan, to meet Isaiah, and just to see some friends that I haven't been able to see in person in a long time. So that was really nice. Not too long ago, my family went back to Fort Scott, and we got to see DJ and Angela and Isaiah again, and then some other family and friends while we were there. So that was really good. Mostly we moved again. Uh, a little
Mhm.
over a year ago, well, about a year and a half ago at this point, we moved to Nashville, and then back in February we moved to Mississippi, and so just a bunch of big changes, one big move, and the opportunity to see friends. I think whenever I do talk about like the big standout moments for me, it's all going to come back to the times when I get to see people that I don't get to see often.
Do you have any more standout moments, Gage?
We started YouTube.
Ah,
That's pretty exciting. We got on the YouTube. We officially hit a year of doing a podcast together, and we had our first video just a week, like within the last week and a half, hit 100 views. So just that stuff's all exciting in the podcast sphere. We also made some friends with the
Yeah,
podcast. We were able to be featured on the Joystick Show, and we plan Joystick Show, and we're excited to be able to invite one of them to join us over here. I was able
it
to
might.
be, huh?
Sorry, it might even be in the past.
Yeah, it might even come out before this episode.
Yeah,
But yeah, so that is exciting. I was able to be on the Oh Crap podcast, and we were able to have Mike and Brittany onto ours. So that was a lot of fun as well.
they're
And
fun.
we didn't have any guests last Thanksgiving, but since then we have had like 12 people guest on the
Wow.
podcast, which has been really exciting just to be able to share this experience not only with each other, but also with friends and to make new friends in the process. And if you, listener, would like to be one of those friends to join us for an episode, reach out and maybe there's something we can work out to do that. We're all about getting other people involved here. So, yeah, it's just been exciting to be able to do this, to learn new
Yep.
skills, and to to be able to do things along those lines. And then I can't forget our friends, Orange Cat Always. Yes, that's right. We're an affiliate, or we have an affiliate. I don't know how it goes, but Orange Cat Always decided they wanted to work with us, which is so exciting because we agreed very quickly. But they're a cat toy company, and if you have a cat, or if you have a friend who has a cat, a loved one who has a cat, or if you yourself just want to be a cat, go to
Hmm.
www.orangecatalways.com/everythingbutthecats and use the code everythingbutthecats when you check out for 10% off your order. They have all kinds of cool stuff, and I've gotten a few things from there myself. I've got a scratch board for Lola. I got a T-shirt for me, and there's more. You can also, DJ, go ahead and give them the other link.
Yeah, you can go to https:// those are forward slashes where the top is to the right. Everythingbutthecats.com/ that's another forward slash where the top is to the right. We sold out. So in layman's terms, that's everythingbutthecats.com/ we sold out.
But still remember to use the code everything but the
Yes.
cats when you check out. They've also got cool sales going on like all the time. So if you got a cat, if you got a friend who has a cat, if you want to be a cat, check them out. But yeah, so those are a lot of the cool events, and uh, that's about it. I mean, my life has been pretty. I got a new job once we moved here. It took like not immediately, but I did get a new job once we moved here, and
Yep.
just been working for the most part. I work, I do the podcast, I go to church, and I eat food. I work out now, but I'm going to talk more about that when we do our New Year's episode.
Dude, it's obvious. I feel like every episode I'm like, man, even more progress.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Even
you bet.
it.
What was that? Is that shirt what, like a medium?
No, this is a 2X or an
Well,
X. I don't know.
it's a really cool shirt too. It's a funny shirt.
Oh, yeah, this is actually a Game Grumps t shirt.
That's fun. Do you have anything else, Gage, or is it DJ time?
It's DJ time.
DJ time. So I honestly haven't had any like major life shifts in this past year. Like nothing really that comes to mind that has like drastically altered kind of every single part of my waking and sleeping life,
Yeah.
and like kind of taken away the rest of like my 20s. Like just nothing that comes to mind. And, like replace them with great joy, to be clear, like a different kind of joy. Nothing comes to mind that has done that. So first I do want to say I'm thankful for Hayden Van Dorian. He's a great guy.
He
If
is a
ever
great
in your
guy. We have
in
an
your life.
episode with him, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watch it.
Yeah, go check it out.
Sweaty. Anyways, yeah, so I had a child. Well, mostly Angela did. Um, but we had a kid in March, and his mother's maiden name is just kidding. But anyways, I'm just giving you all the details about him. His social. We had a kid, and that is by and large the biggest standout moment of really my life, I would say. Um, kind of kind of tops like meeting Gage, for instance.
It better.
Um, and like getting married, like it's just yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I well, like I'm not gonna say anything new about parenthood or
Mm-hmm.
like the moment of becoming a father. I'm not gonna say anything that no one has said before that like everyone else hasn't said before. But it like it's just if you have become a dad and like you're a dad who loves your kids, you know, just kind of what a special moment it is, and like what a special moment, like just what a special year this has been.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of the best years of my like the best year of my life, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty well. We also that's on a pretty big level. Another thing that's made this year good is that I have gotten to hang out with Gage twice.
Mm-hmm.
Like he said, the canoeing trip was a lot of fun. And then getting to see them in Fort Scott, especially since Isaiah had gotten a bit older and more like aware of the world around him.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun to like both have Gage hang out with him again and to get to introduce him to Gage's parents because I mean, they've been near and dear to me for like half my life as well. So
That's wild to think about.
yeah,
We've known each other for half our lives.
yeah, more soon, like
More
more
already,
already.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think of us becoming friends as like a freshman year thing, even though we knew each other already.
Yeah.
Because in freshman year, you didn't tell me to leave the table so that you could plan a birthday party
Freshman
or
year,
ask for phone numbers and then not call when I was the only one that gave you mine.
I was going to say freshman year, I didn't not call.
Yeah. Uh,
Gosh.
and freshman year is the first time I went to your house because the first time was working on debate,
Really? So that would have
the
been
two of
like
us and
for
Mark.
opening weekend.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And that was probably mostly just us trying to file away squirrel killers. What a time. What a time.
The glory days. The days indeed.
Yeah, the
But
days.
yeah, so that was really special and really fun to get to do. It's been fun just kind of like because he's so cute and like so social and friendly, it's really nice to just go to events like, look at this thing I made. Uh so that's been fun. I got to officiate two weddings this year. I did my mom's wedding in February and then a cousin's wedding in September. So those are fun. And then as like this is really low, really like small. But this past weekend was just a really good weekend. Like every single day. On Friday, we took Isaiah to the zoo for the first time
Okay.
uh, in Springfield, and like he got to see a giraffe up close, and just kind of really watched it as it was like begging for us to feed it. We didn't. Uh, and like so that was really fun. And then Saturday got to hang out with some old friends of ours
Mm-hmm.
who we hadn't seen in a few months at least. So that was really fun and really special. And then Sunday was so we this morning it was announced that Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. Just
Mm-hmm.
for context of like what weekend I'm referring to. So it was the weekend before that. But just the message, the sermon at church was, and just the whole service at church was like really good, really focused on unity and like just believing, like trusting in God in a way that like your life can't be shaken by something as small as an election. And just like overall, really solid weekend. So yeah, that's the this most recent weekend was a really good one.
Good. Good. Anyways, our next question. Is that it? Do you have any more that you want to say on events and stuff?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. What's the dumbest thing you cried about this year?
Yeah. So I've cried way more this year than probably the last like 5 years combined. Um I've I've probably cried more just like staring at Isaiah than I have like cried like grieving my dead dad. So it's hard to say because I've cried so much this year. But it's not dumb. It's like I'm just like overwhelmed with emotions at this boy that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the emotions are like I'm gonna come out your eyes now. Uh, so it's tricky. I would say there are a couple specific instances I can think of that I like where I can think of what I was crying about. Then I'm like, okay, that's silly. So one of them is when he was younger, we used to play a lot more music on Spotify, but then we were playing it on our TV, and he would like watch the TV, and so now we've kind of stopped because we are trying our best to not raise a little addict.
An iPad
Um,
kid.
yeah, and yeah, so we're trying, we're doing our best. Um, but one of the songs that we would play a lot from a couple different people is "You've Got a Friend in Me."
Mm.
And I just the very first time we played that song for him, like it's playing, and I'm just sitting there like holding him, like not quite sobbing, but like crying pretty big, and and like I don't say this out loud, but in my head I'm like, he does have a friend in me, like you do have a friend in me, bud. Uh, so that was the one like so like pretty big tears for. It's a good song, and
Mm-hmm.
like and he does have a friend in me. Gosh darn it. So there's that, and then I think maybe this just shows unhealthiness in me. I don't know, but there've been like a number of a number of times where I'm almost like already grieving the empty nest that's gonna be here, or like not necessarily an empty nest because we hope to have more, but just like one day he's gonna go off to college, and like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna yearn for like this exact moment right here where he's on my chest and sleeping, and I feel like I can't watch the TV that I want to watch because he's here with me. Like, and I'm gonna miss this exact moment, and
Mm-hmm.
like so not crying because I feel guilty, but just crying like almost all like pre grieving the future time when I'm gonna miss this moment. It's been a while since I've cried for either of those things. I feel like it was probably about 5 months of my emotions just like you have no control over us. We're running the show now, and I feel like I've maybe become desensitized to what this kid is to me, or just my emotions have calmed down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of tears early on for some pretty silly, not necessarily silly, but kind of silly things.
Okay. I don't really think I cry. I don't know if it's dumb stuff. Like the last year, the example that I gave is it was self-induced because I was watching like try not to cry challenges on TikTok where it was like a soldier coming home and the kid, like the child, being very excited to see their
Child.
parent and the the tears that come with that and watching reunions and stuff like that. So those kinds of things, uh, those make me cry. Most of the movies that I mentioned, other than Savage Land, I was crying at multiple points throughout the movie.
Yeah.
I just kind of am a crier. And so when I watch a show or I watch a movie, it'll make me cry. Books don't really have that effect on me, which is interesting in its own way. But movies, for sure, movies and TV shows, I'm pretty sure there's even been a psych episode here or there that I'd shed a tear to. I don't know. But yeah, for sure that. And then so you made me think of something. I I'm not like it is not on the horizon, but for some reason the topic came up. I think I was talking to somebody else about like what songs they did at their wedding for like the mother son dance, and I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about like what would I like to do? Like what would be a good Oh, yes, because I was talking to Shayna and Jared about like what Jared's should be with his mom. And I was thinking like, well, what should mine be with my mom? And then I started thinking about that and some of the options that I came up with. You'll Be in My Heart from Tarzan
Mm-hmm.
and
Classic. That's a good one.
classic, just things like that. And I was thinking about some of those songs and I started bawling, just imagining that moment. And
Yeah.
not even like the not the wedding itself, not being married, like just the mother son dance and like the songs and the way that my relationship with my mom has progressed over the years, and so just
Yeah.
things like that. And yeah, so that And again, I don't think any of it's dumb, but like some of the moments are a little silly. Maybe crying to a psych episode, that might be dumb. But
That's pretty dumb, yeah.
everything else, yeah, I'd say just occasional little silly things. The biggest laugh that you had in 2024, and you went first last time, so I'll go first this time. Definitely the biggest laugh I had. So if you watched part two of The Horrors of Leaf's Harbor, which is our Halloween RPG that we did, at the very end, there's a little video that Garrett made using AI of DJ. And he's wearing like a flesh colored shirt in the image that we used, but it just
Pink.
looks like pink, but it just looks like he's naked. And he's just walking with this sad piano music in the background. I'm pretty sure the AI prompt was make him smile or something like that. And he's just like walking and he's got this like really sad look on his face. And so we
That's so
finished
dumb.
we finished recording the episode, and then Garrett and I were just talking because everybody else, DJ and Andrew, left. And Garrett was like, Gage, you need to watch this because he made it. And we both just sat there dying. Like, I could not breathe. So if you haven't watched it, please go watch it. So you can even skip the whole video and just watch the last, it's probably 30 seconds. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. I don't know why it was so funny to us, but we died. We died watching that. So that was probably my biggest laugh of the year, and it was recent.
Give me just a moment. Uh, yeah. So, do you have any other big laughs, Gage?
Well, I've laughed a good deal on this podcast, and most of my biggest laughs are probably just moments that we've had together laughing as we tell stories and as we catch each other off guard with different things. Many of them I've had to cut, but yeah, no, it's been a
Okay.
year with some good laughs. I think that's the most specific one that I can remember, though. That's that
Yeah,
is the most
it's a
specific
pretty
one
good
that
one.
I can remember.
I think this was this year. This could have been last year. This might have been on my list last year. Did I talk about the new Jackbox game last year? Yes. Well, crap. Uh,
It was like literally just a couple of days. I think you said 3 days before we recorded that one because I was listening to it earlier.
that's so funny. Yeah, so that was really good. That was pretty funny. I would guess other than that, probably times that I've laughed at Isaiah, like drastically changed my life, man. I feel like everything kind of points back to him now. But like, yeah, just there are times when like he'll giggle and that's really fun and funny. Sometimes I cry, sometimes I laugh. Or like he'll roll over, do something silly, or like steal glasses or something. And I laughed pretty big. I also laughed pretty big when I saw this video for the first time. That was a that was a quality moment.
Now,
Um,
did you see it in the episode or did you see it in the group chat first?
I saw it when we were streaming and you guys talked about it.
Okay. Okay. I had some pretty good laughs while we were streaming too. That was a fun time.
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
another exciting moment from the year. We did our first official stream and
Hmm.
we plan to do more of those. So that's exciting. That's fun.
Yeah. So I don't know that I have too many like really funny moments. Yeah, I would need to think I guess more on that, but I'm not gonna.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
As you can tell, time has passed since the first part of this video, and we have added someone else to the fray. Say hi, Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted, actually.
Wait, wait, I've got a bit. This is Isaiah, all grown up. We it's been that long.
Yeah, it's been that long to record our Thanksgiving episode. This is actually DJ's formerly 7 month old son.
Formerly 8 months.
Bigger,
Heck.
bigger beard than me, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not hard. Anyways,
Boy's a man.
we failed to get our last question in for the Thanksgiving episode, so we decided we were going to do it today, which is still before Thanksgiving, and you're still getting this episode at the same time, but time has passed. So, DJ, you remember what the last two questions were, right?
Obviously.
Good. Can you remind me?
Let me get the same background that I had last time. I don't even a little bit, Gage.
So the last two questions that we didn't have time to get to were, uh, what has God been teaching you this year, and how has He been growing you this year, essentially.
Mm.
So we kind of, in last year's Thanksgiving special, we formed it into one question. And Jacob, you're honestly like, dive on in with this one if you want to, but we're just going to talk a little bit about like what God has been teaching us this past year and what He's been growing in us. So,
I'll send it.
okay, send it, DJ.
Yeah, so I think that I mean a few things, right? Like I think that there's a lot in fatherhood to unpack about God and Jesus. So like I think that there was one time it was he might have been like 2 months old, so he's just a little guy, and I'm holding him one morning, and I have this realization that a lot of times, like I think of, I would never like admit this, but like it just clicks. Like man, a lot of times I feel like I process my conversations or my like relationship with God, kind of like my relationship with Angela, where I'm like, I think we should do this. And she's like, actually, I think we should do this. And I'm like, I think you're wrong. And then I end up doing her thing anyways, uh, because we both trust her more than we trust me. And like, so it's really easy for me to have that similar, like, okay, that's how like my relationship with God is. Like, I think we should do this. He thinks we should do this. I really think we should do this. But okay, I guess he's right. Like, we both know he's right. He's better than me. Let's call that that. Um, but like the relationship that God had, like I'm this little baby boy in the arms like of him, and like I mean I was sleep deprived, but there was something really profound in that moment where it's like man, like I accidentally think of God and I as equals, like more than I want to admit,
Hmm.
but like I'm this useless little baby. Like all I can do is be cute. That is what I bring to the table is that he loves me. Um and so I think that was one thing that like was really I don't know, just like kind of poignant. And I think that
Hmm.
like just with a lot of fatherhood stuff, like you get to see like okay, God called Abraham to sacrifice Isaac and like here's what that means. Or like God like willingly gave up his son and like here's what that means. So there's just like some extra insight to that, but I feel like even more than that I've gotten to see kind of like I said was like talking about earlier like the amount that I love my boy is like and the way that I love my boy is the way that God loves me.
Hmm.
And like I I love him so much. Um so I think that yeah, there's just a lot in fatherhood that really changes you, but then also like helps shape perspective of like what God says about who He is and like who God is. So there's that. I also think that it's like so I've had those really good moments, but it's also been kind of a hard year spiritually as well, where like I already used lack of time as an excuse to not spend a lot of time with Jesus or like to not do like disciplines or like devotional things. And now I've got way less time than I had before. And so I think that that's something that like just lately I've been kind of processing like man, I've like really just like spirituality in a lot of ways it just kind of is like sitting on the sidelines, which I don't think is the the way to go.
Hmm.
So I think that that's something that I'm like having to grow in and figure out like, okay, what does that look like to grow as someone with a lot of responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
but like none of them more important than like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure that out. Remind me the questions. See if that unlocks any others that I've got tucked away.
It was like, what has God been teaching you the most this year, and how has He been growing you? Essentially.
Yeah, so that I feel like that covers it
Mm-hmm.
pretty well. With canoeing stuff, I think I've gotten to see a tangible like there's one leg of canoeing where I like we didn't pray before we left, and that one sucked. And then the next morning we prayed before we left, and it was great. Excuse me. And then when I went on my second trip, we prayed before we did the trip, and it was great. And so it's just been a very tangible like prayer made a difference. So that's part of my game plan for the next trip.
Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
In my job, which I've had for like 3 years now, so it's not like anything. But like I feel like he does a good job of using me, not because of me, but in spite of me,
Mm-hmm.
which is good because I get to grow, and it's in line with what Scripture says about who he chooses to use and
Mm-hmm.
how he chooses to use people. So it's good.
Jacob, do you want to jump in? I know that.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the two questions for what are the things that God has been learning or teaching you this year,
Mm-hmm.
and where do you think God has kind of grown you this year?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that God's kind of teaching me in particular is just trusting and waiting in his provision. So just to kind of, I guess, fill in everybody that's listening, because I just jumping into this conversation. So my wife and I were joining the efforts of Mustard Seed Network, great ministry of planting churches in Japan. So with that, we're into this period of transition. We're selling the house, and we are fully dedicated to support raising, going around and just visiting with churches, visiting with Christians. And so with that, I've left the job that I had, the kind of the financial security, sold a house. And then when we left, we had some buyers, but the buyers fell through. And so now we went kind of back to square one with the buyers. And so I'm still having to work a part-time job just to stay afloat above the mortgage. Well, I also want to be able to dedicate my time and effort to support raising, so that way we can get to Japan sooner. So, like, probably as of right now, I'm speaking, we probably have like $150 in our bank account, and I'm still working a part-time job, so I need to work a little bit more, I guess, to try to get a ton of that mortgage. Hopefully, though, we got a buyer for the house, so hopefully here in the next couple of weeks that house will sell.
Mm-hmm.
It has just in the last couple of months with we had a buyer, the buyer fell through. Okay, now I got to work. Yeah, it really sucked, if I could say that, because I felt like we had all of our eggs in the basket and just ready to go, and then we kind of get the rug pulled out from underneath us. And so there's those moments where we're super bummed, and we just like, why God, why, you've led us to this point, why are we having to go through this? But there's also moments that I have to be reminded of the God's provision. Right now, what you're looking at here is, for all you viewers or you listeners, though, we moved in with my in-laws. They added on to their house with the idea for missionaries to come and stay if they ever go on furlough, and we're like, hey, let us break that in. So we've been living upstairs. I've been kind of doing little odd end projects around the house just because I know a little carpentry stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we have a place that's rent free, utility free. Sometimes it's food free. It's kind of nice to come home and dinner's already made. So super, super blessed,
Mm-hmm.
and God's provision through that. But yeah, it's just kind of in those big things that you can kind of get overwhelming, and you forget the small things that God's working in. We reading the little Bible with my kids, and we kind of got to the story of Numbers where the Israelites were just grumbling They were like, man, we had the fish, we had the leeks, we had the onions, we had all the stuff back in Egypt, and now we're just stuck with this manna. And they lost sight of what God is providing daily for them, and they hungered for something more. They hungered for something at a time when they were in slavery,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then so they forgot about God's provision. And so that was just kind of a reminder for me this evening as well, just reading that to our girls. So yeah, that's one way that I feel like God's been teaching me is just trust in His provision and in His timing of His provision.
So, are you saying that your time in Belleville was like slavery?
No, no, DJ,
Okay.
no,
um,
no. We had a good time in Belleville.
Yeah.
so you said that you guys are support raising. Is there a link that maybe we could share if any of our listeners wanted to be part of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know the link on the top of my head, but I know it's like mustard
Send
seeds.
it to me.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But yeah, it's like
Yeah.
mustard seed donation or ministry preparation. Yeah, I'll send it to you. So
Yeah.
my friend Gage will post that. And
But yeah.
then where I feel like God has been growing me, especially this last year, I would. Well, we've gone through a big trend again, kind of going off of what I've just said. You know, we've we've gone in a big transition of becoming missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
We felt this desire to go and proclaim Christ where He has not yet been named, and that's where we kind of joined forces with Mustard Seed, just because that's the reality in Japan. It's not that they've heard the gospel and reject it. It's just majority of the people will live their entire life without ever hearing about the gospel of Jesus. So where God's grown me is being more missional, because I've known of Mustard Seed Network when we were in college. Jay Greer's come and spoke at the International Focus Week, and so Mustard Seed's always been on my heart. But I do remember sitting in chapel and being like, man, that's great. Not for me though.
Mm.
Just because living in a city, I thought that's not for me. I lived in a country all my life, not just in cities, but like overseas in a whole different country, in a whole different language. Being missionaries. I'm just a country bumpkin, and I will be in these farm community towns because that's what I felt like is my comfort zone. And I kind of learn late, unfortunately, because I'm just slow learner at times. But when you tell God that you're not going to do something, He tends to have a tendency to prove you wrong. And that's what it was at Ozark, right? When in high school, I hated the idea of public speaking. Could not do it. I always got stage fright and I always hated reading and writing. Math and science and history was my thing. And so telling God, no, there ain't no way I'm doing public speaking. And He has a sense of humor and saying, well, try me. And, I went to Ozark, got a preaching degree. And at Ozark, I told God, no, I'm not going to become a missionary. And God has a sense of humor and says, hey, you remember that time you said something to me? Yeah, about that. But no, it's been more in this last year, especially going to Japan back in March and just seeing it firsthand, like the reality that is in Japan. It's not to the point when you're actually there on the ground and you just see the sheer mass of people
Mm-hmm.
that's in Japan. It's densely populated. I mean, Tokyo itself, like 37 million people in that metro area.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just like counting faces, but of the faces of like 1,000 faces that I counted, maybe five of them were Christians, but a vast majority have never heard the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've this year, God has grown me in having being more mission minded and having a heart for the nations. And so, yeah, and I'm ever super appreciative and thankful for that because, yeah, unfortunately, I was too stubborn in college, um, and too set in my ways and too set in my comfort. When you allow yourself to be an instrument of righteousness for the glory of God, I firmly believe that, when you do things the for the work of Christ, it will not be for vain because it's for His glory, and that's kind of where we're at with working with mustard seed. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's my 2 cents. My what well, not my 2 cents. My what God's been showing me.
Yeah. Well, shoot, I knew about mustard seed, and I knew that that was something you guys were doing, but we haven't talked a lot in a minute, and so I didn't know the whole breadth of it. I can definitely imagine that's a time when you're really having to learn to put trust in him and in the waiting.
Yeah, it was because it was something like, I don't know. At 8, my wife, she struck the conversation. It was like, do you feel like we could? I don't know, I'm trying to remember what exactly she said. She said, "Do you think we're doing the most good here?"
Hmm.
Um, now, Belleville, and if anybody from Belleville that's listening, it was a good town and it was a great church. It was the first church for us. I mean, you guys, you dealt with a lot of me just fresh out of school, and me kind of allowing me to kind of smooth out the rough edges. But it was a good church that treated us well because we moved there in September of 19. Our firstborn Jesse was born January 2020. March of 2020 hit, so COVID pandemic shuts the world down. So here we are, brand new ministry, being a dad, trying to juggle fatherhood, trying to juggle ministry, all in the midst of pandemic. And so yeah, it was a good church that just was willing to work with me and for me, just to further the cause of the gospel there in that town. But it was kind of one of those moments is like, it's a town of 2,000 people with 10 churches. It's like the gospel is well covered here. So where can we go that we can do? Where can we go to advance the kingdom where it's not been tracked? You know,
Hmm.
and so that was a conversation that we had for a 5-hour car ride back, heading back to Belleville from Missouri. And it was something that we talked, we prayed, we fasted, sought wise counsel over for months before we even reached out to mustard seed because we wanted to make sure that there was something that we felt like both of us was on board.
Hmm.
Thanks for having me have a space to share.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. I know we kind of just threw you into this one, but it's
What's
like,
okay? I'm glad I could catch up with you guys, and yeah.
wanna come talk about some Christmas gift ideas? Oh, also, pour your heart out about God and what He's teaching you right now. That's how we trap him. Give him the 1-2.
Also, Jacob will be on the next episode because
Oh yeah.
uh, we just got done recording it.
Oh,
Yes, we just got done
well,
recording the next episode. Jacob is our guest for that one, and so we asked him to join us for the last half of this one.
We should cut him out of the next episode.
that's completely.
Oh, that would be funny. He just shows up for
I
these two questions. Yeah, so last year, I feel like a lot of what I'm going to say this year is very similar to what I said last year. We moved again. And so going from, a really bustling suburb of Nashville to a little bit smaller, quieter suburb of Memphis was it was a big change. It was a bit drastic. Even in such a like it was only 4 hours away as opposed to the initial drive from Kansas to Tennessee being like 7 or 8, and just the little bits of change moving between these two places were pretty big. And I feel like a lot of this year, I feel like I have genuinely been busier here than I was when I was in Nashville. I've also added on the video element of editing the podcast, which it really does add a little bit more than I was expecting. I thought it would add a little bit more to the process, but it adds quite a bit to the process. And I've enjoyed it. And I think it's been something that's been very fun to improve in. And I think I have improved a little bit. And I hope to continue doing that. But just, I that I now have a consistent workout schedule, and I'm still doing videos for the church back home, but I'm doing that on a volunteer basis now, and I have a full time job that I end up working overtime for most almost every day, and I end up working a few hours almost every weekend. And so, like, I feel like time is just something that's a lot less readily available than it was even just a year ago, even just 6 months ago. And a lot of what I believe, like what I feel like God's been teaching me through this, is the importance of still making time for Him, because I do a lot of that, like kind of like what you said, DJ, of like using lack of time as an excuse, because like I'm busy, and I think a lot of these things I'm busy with are, not bad things. I think like I'm doing good things. I'm working, I'm doing church work, or I'm, with family, or I'm doing the podcast, or I'm doing stuff that I don't think is like a bad use of time, but I'm not dedicating as much to God as I would like to. And that's how a lot of the year went. And then come like a month and a half ago, I read Crazy Love by Francis Chan, and it just kind of like opened my eyes back up. And I mentioned this earlier in the episode, but it opened my eyes back up to like my need for being very serious in my love for God. And so that's something that I believe one of the chapters even like addresses the question. It's like, do you love God? And sometimes the answer to that is no. And you have to like really look at yourself and ask, do I love God? And when you don't love God, like pray about it. Ask Him to grow in you in that, and to like help you grow in your love for Him. And that was something that just kind of like, I don't know, it emphasized a part of faith and a part of my relationship with God that I hadn't thought about before, is the idea that like, yes, maybe I've always said and always felt like I loved God, but that's still something I can grow in. Like that's not something that's just a one and done. And it kind of like with any relationship, like you don't stop growing in your love for your spouse or for your children. Like you shouldn't, at least. And you don't stop growing in your love for your friends and your other family. It's something that you should continue to grow in as time goes on. And the same is true with your relationship with God. And I think that that's nothing like earth shattering, but it was definitely something that my eyes were opened up to a little bit this year. And then another thing that I think he's been teaching me, or really just pulling my attention to, is I've always put an emphasis on this concept of being right or being correct. It's something that I've always really just wanted. And I feel like he's been pulling me toward scriptures, and he's been pulling me toward like situations and conversations with other people to kind of show me that like, yes, you want to be correct in your doctrine, you do want to be correct in that, in what you believe and stuff like that, but the goal of conversations, especially conversations with non-believers, with people who are weak in their faith, etc., it's not to be right, it's to bring them to the cross. And like, not to show them like, yes, show them love, yes, show them grace, but like the point is to bring them to the cross. That's the point. And that's not about being right, that's not about like a lot of other things. It's bring them to the foot of the cross. Jesus will do the rest of the work. And so like that's something that's kind of shaped a lot of how I see ministry, and a lot of how I see like interpersonal relationships, and being a Christian in the world that we live in. And it's helped me to have grace for people more. It really has. Uh, just this whole idea of like, yes, like when someone is a follower of Christ, there's conversations that do need to be had, and when someone isn't, like you want to be able to answer their questions, but ultimately your job is to bring them to the foot of the cross, and make sure that you yourself rest there. And so that's been big. And then what he's been growing in me, uh, muscles, hitting the gym. No, I think that last year I think he was teaching me a lot in my in grace for myself and grace for like my family. And I think this past year, a lot of what he's been growing in me is like showing love and grace to people who I disagree with, or love and grace to people who are like actively like antagonistic towards the faith and towards like what I believe and towards even just who I am about certain things. um, is like showing love and grace in those situations. And I'm not like being attacked for anything, but I think that that's something that just being mindful of that kind of stuff is something that he's really grown in me this year. And in turn, that's also like helping me have grace with myself, because who's more antagonistic towards me than me?
It's like they say, go on up, bald head.
Be careful, DJ. There might be two bears waiting for you. Second
I mean,
Kings, chapter 2, verses 22 and on, I think.
23 through 25.
23 through 25, yeah. Anyways,
Thanks.
this has been our Thanksgiving episode. I don't remember what all we talked about exactly in the first part. If there's overlap between the first part and the second part, so be it.
Appreciate it the second time.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it sounds like it certainly does sound like God has been leading each of us in some really cool ways. And I think he continues to. uh, Throughout your whole life, genuinely. And we're all still pretty young in the grand scheme of things. And so I think it's just cool to have a God who is so vast and so huge that we can spend our entire lives getting to know him and our entire lives becoming more like him, and then we still get eternity to continue doing it. And that's just cool. So yeah, very thankful for you guys for joining us. Jacob, thank you for joining us for this last half. DJ, thank you for always sticking by my side in this. um,
Yeah, thanks for having
Hey,
me.
yeah. And thank you, listeners, for listening and watching. Actually, those of you who are on YouTube, thank you for watching. Do the things. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave comments for things you're thankful for, or things that you look back over this last year that really stick out to you. We would love to hear your stories and be involved in them as well. DJ, do you have any thanks or anything else you'd like to give? Or Jacob,
He's
do you have any
he's
final words?
he's ready.
not really, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you to Adam Ward and Jared Scrother for our intro and outro music, as always.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for letting
yourselves, I guess.